thanks everybody for joining. As we know, we've got our last Catapult webinar series here that we're finally been able to lock Paul in for. It's been obviously a little bit of a tough time with schedules and so forth, and it's a really busy period. So we're very grateful to have him obviously joining us today in our last performance webinar for this particular series for 2021. And I think just in reflection of what we've been through over the last 4 presentations, if you have been able to catch those, or if you haven't, you can certainly check those out on our community channel as well as on YouTube now. But yeah, just first and foremost, I'll be your host today. My name is Matthew Pell. I'm one of the applied sports scientists here at Catapult, working across the Major League Soccer, all of our Major League Soccer accounts, as well as American football and collegiate level here in North America. So just in terms of the last 3 presentations that we've been able to have, and if you've been very fortunate to tune in for those, we've had a real focus with this series looking at the development pathway for strength, conditioning, as well as high performance and sports scientists, all the way through to the elite level. And we've had some great presentations from Pitt University with Felix Pressel and Frank Barone, and more recently with Walter Grundes from Philadelphia Union in the academy there, and more recently with Dr. Caesar Milan from Soccer Canada. So we really appreciate those guys for providing their insights into their programs and obviously the time that went into those. Just quickly, we want to thank all of our clients across the globe, and that is continuing to grow. So we're really grateful for all the support and continued support, and certainly this presentation today is a really big product of what we're trying to achieve here at Catapult. Just quickly, I want to make mention of an upcoming performance analytics conference that is very soon to be hosted by a couple of our very own here in North America, and particularly from Catapult and one of our current clients in Nashville Soccer. We have Adam Chabon from Catapult presenting on our new SVG product, as well as we've got Oliver Farrell, who'll be presenting on all things analytics and strategy with regards to Nashville soccer. So just a reminder, if you haven't yet seen that, please check it out on all of our channels. Obviously, for all of those, not only prospective clients tuning in, but also with our current clients, if you haven't yet to check out our latest products based around our Vector S7, and also having the option with our goalkeeping metrics, certainly something to keep an eye on, or if you are interested, please inquire with one of our business development managers within your region, or submitting through the website. More than happy to provide some information around that with our heart rate integration as well as our latest technology. So without further ado, I'm very delighted to be able to introduce Dr. Paul Balsom today. And we've got a really stacked, not only discussion, but we're hoping to dive into all areas of performance and certainly unpack his experience in the industry. But as I really made mention at the start, the whole focus of this particular series was to really provide a platform for aspiring coaches and performance managers that are really looking to grow not only their own in their own environment, but have aspirations to go on to either work in the national environment, but really setting the foundation with regards to their own, obviously their own organisations, and reflecting what they are currently doing in terms of their own processes, and really conducting and getting some expertise-based advice, particularly from guys like Paul, Paul, who you'll hear from today, is something that we've really tried to target as a part of this workshop series. So we're absolutely delighted that he's accepted to come on, and we're really keen to be able to have an open discussion based around all areas of his experience, and then certainly some of his recommendations with regards to the latest and greatest across all areas of soccer performance. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Paul to introduce himself, and yeah, we'll certainly jump into it, mate. So again, thank you very much for coming on, and we're really grateful for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. As I mentioned before, I tend not to do so many of these the podcasts, but happy to jump on tonight with you. Background. Actually, I'm not too. I'll just take it briefly. I think it's I like to talk about what I'm doing more in today and potentially in the future, but. Went through the sports science route in Cardiff in the UK, did a 3-year bachelor in sports science there, moved over to the States, to Springfield College, and spent 2 years at Springfield College. Did a master's in health and fitness, which in itself wasn't sport related, but managed to squeeze in a thesis on, I managed to do a field test with football players, which is quite interesting actually looking back, because it was a long time ago. And then ended up.
Sorry, just a quick one on that as well, Paul. What was the decision for coming over here?
It was actually we did an exchange program with my university or my college in Cardiff. So I came over to Springfield for a term during my years in my Bachelor of Science degree, and just really thought it was a great place. At the time in the 80s, they seemed to be so much further ahead than we were in the UK. So it was just saw that as a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, awesome.
From the States, like to tell the story. Sent letters to Professor Bjorn Ekblom, who was leading physiologist and working in soccer over here at the time in Sweden, and we exchanged. Back in the day when you were writing letters on with pens and sticking stamps on envelopes and forward and back. And cut a long story short, I moved over here in '89, and 32 years later, still going strong.
Yep, fantastic, awesome, mate. Well, it's a wealth of experience. There's no doubt about it, and obviously that's led into a very long professional career for you personally. And I'll just flick over here to the next slide, but I do have to sort of present the picture. But you are juggling a lot of hats. There's no doubt about it. I think in terms of what I have been able to really review, and managing it all, plus a family as well. You've obviously got 4 kids. It's certainly a busy schedule. But yeah, talk us through obviously your experience and journey across the board, and and obviously on your latest appointment as well. We're really keen to be able to hear about that.
So it all really started with, as I mentioned, Professor Bjorn Ekblom, who also worked at the Swedish FA. So actually already in the early 90s, I did some work with the Football Association. Believe it or not, we in 92 we actually were programming computers to talk to VHS recorders to find a set piece on one VHS and then recorded on another, and then we're able to present the coaches with the highlights from a game. So, and then also obviously the sports science part with the testing of the national team and the young players as well. We did quite a lot of work with the young players. Moved into the ladies team, the female team, the women's team. Worked in the club side, and then worked at the World Cup in '95 for the women's team, which was here in Sweden. And then in '98. I was asked to join the men's national team, and basically from '98 until today, that's been not my full-time job because I don't have a 100% contract with the Swedish FA, but they've been absolutely fantastic in allowing me then to do other projects, of which you can see Bolton 2002 to 2004, and then Southampton 2006 2008. So basically commuting from Stockholm once or twice a month. And then basically supporting a team of practitioners who are already at the club. And then obviously the manager at Southampton moved to Leicester in 2008, and I followed him, Nigel Pearson. Very grateful for that opportunity. I stayed at Leicester until this year, and when after 13 years, it felt time to move on. And then out of the blue, I was offered the chance to travel to Mexico and visit Tigres in Monterrey. And only last week we decided that we'd spend the next year together. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, fantastic. A lot in that, I suppose, just in terms of setting the scene, in terms of really winding all the way back from your first introduction into the industry. Have you always been, obviously had a passion for football as well?
Yeah, I do get it. The question does come up: Have I worked in any other sport, or have I considered working in other sports? And it's a categorically I'll say no. My love for football was from a young age. Very passionate from the age of 4 or 5. My father and my grandfather took me up to the local team, Torquay United. Fell in love with the game and played at a very, very average level. I can't say it's more than that, and probably overachieved to play at a very average level as well. But did play semi-professionally, and actually in when I moved over to the States, did play semi-professionally.
Gotcha.
But that doesn't mean, only because I've only worked in football, doesn't mean I have a lot of respect for other sports. Absolutely a lot of respect for other sports. I believe we can and should learn from other sports. But I believe that with my experience as it's grown, then my skill set is best suited to working in football.
Yeah, gotcha. And what sort of other sports have you looked at more specifically in terms of providing some innovation to obviously your own environment? Strangely
enough, Formula One. With SPG, actually, we got the opportunity through some contacts at SPG to visit a Formula One factory or a factory in the UK, and that was a real big eye opener about especially their use of data and technology, and and how they have a team of 40 people off-site. So when a race is happening live, they have actually 40 people plus in a room analyzing data. And in fact, I talked to the guy who set it up for me not a couple of weeks ago, and really one thing that strikes me is, what do they do in Formula One between races? They simulate races. They use data to simulate races. And in some respects, that's similar for us, is that our training should be simulating things that are going to come up in a game, and be it physically to cope, or be it mentally to make decisions. So Formula One has had not that I'm in any way a fan of Formula One, but very interesting sport. And then the other team sports, the handball, and I think handball. So we have to learn from handball. And then athletics. I think the development is speed. Maybe we'll come back to that. I think there's a lot of knowledge out there that we could and should be tapping into.
Yeah, got you. And with those conversations in Formula One, I know personally the environments that I have worked in previously, our coaches have been really invested in that, more so from a communication perspective. How have you found extracting not only the data, but just the high performance aspect of looking at all of the detail to be able to put that engine together and make it really run well? What have you really taken back from those collaboration pieces?
I think we have to be realistic. I mean, there are similarities in high performance, but we're looking at two completely different, probably the opposite ends of the spectrum in many ways. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but over 200 people working on a car and a driver. And, we maybe 2 or 3 of us working with a squad of 30 people. So, of course there are differences, but you said something there, the attention to detail. You said communication, which again, hopefully we'll come back to, maybe data. And this was one of the conversations that sticks in my mind from the visit, where data is saying one thing and the driver is saying another thing, or driver not trusting the data, or want to do something different than the way that data is pointing. I guess we can bring that back to to our sport, in that maybe we're talking to discussion with a manager or a player, either post training, but could be live during a game. I mean, once we were able to bring technology to the touchline, people were starting to think, well, maybe data is going to actually affect, things like substitution during a game. But I really don't think we're there yet. I don't think we have the metrics to really to decide if a player is ready to be pulled off, because the number is telling us that. Maybe it may support a decision, but I think we've got, and again, I keep saying we'll come back, but I think this is something that we're dealing with basic metrics at the moment that in the not too distant future we'll be getting far more information from a game of football than we're getting today, just as they're getting from a race.
Yeah, makes sense. And obviously the new opportunity, I think there's an element of excitement, no doubt, for that. How did that conversation really come about? And I suppose just in terms of your own values and what you were looking for at the time, just talk us through really how that connection piece was made.
I mean, leaving Leicester was right. I had no regrets. It was a mutual decision. It was time. I had UEFA, which we haven't really talked about yet, and the Swedish FA. So I wasn't actively looking for anything. I knew that I'm not quite ready to hang my boots up yet, or my equipment yet. So I knew I would be looking for another challenge. And again, networks. If we're giving advice to people, the importance of having networks, and I think genuine networks, not having a network of colleagues for ticking boxes, but to really make sure that you're actively talking to people, and a colleague of a colleague contacted me, and from the first meeting, it just felt right. It just felt, yes, this is something. And what I did though is I made this a shorter term, so it'll be initially to December 2022. I'm not sure I'm ready for. I would love to have another 13 years in Mexico, but. And also being wise, that we're able to identify very specific. So we've got a timeline of very specific goals along the timeline. So, this is something with experience that I've learned to really be. And I put together, I think it ended up about after an initial visit, I think I came back with a 45 or 50 page proposal to them. I outline the areas that I think that we can work together on. So.
Fantastic.
I'm really looking, and such a great club. Very passionate about the football, and already great people working there. For me, working with great people is so important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How have you, just one more, just on the, I suppose, the evolution, obviously, of departments and just from the various organisations you've spent time at, some of those being a lot longer than others. But how have you found just the evolution of not only sports technology, but performance departments and so forth over the years? Talk us through that journey for you.
I mean, I've been on my own in many departments, and even actually in fact, I'm still on my own here in the Swedish FA with the men's national team. I am fitness and sports science, and up until 2 years ago, I also did performance analysis. I mean, people might forget Sweden are a relatively small country, but in the UK, obviously today in the UK, I mean, a sports science department, it's not unusual to have double figures, 10 people or more, only working with the first team. So we're not talking about the medical department. We're talking about the fitness department, and maybe a couple of analysts in there as well. Compared to 10 years ago when I first started at Leicester, we had a part-time school teacher who was basically the part-time school teacher, and the head physio were in charge of all the fitness. So we've come a long way in a very important time, and I think in a department now, I mean, it's any department that's starting up, I think that you have to plan for. It's going to get bigger. I don't think it should be. I think it can become too big, but there will be certain blocks. For example, the performance nutritionist is almost a given position in most clubs today. So you have to build. I like diversity. I don't like you know, a department of conformists. I like mavericks. People with open mind, people who are prepared to maybe try a different way, or certainly be creative within the framework of the philosophy of the organization. I think loyalty is really important. That you know, together we are a team, and that's sometimes it's okay. Of course, everybody's loyal. No, they're not always loyal. We need to be loyal when we lose. We need to be loyal when we win, and we need to be loyal to the manager. But we also need to be loyal to the club. And I think that's I've learned that over the years, is that if my salary comes from the club, my loyalty has to be with the club. I also have then a loyalty to the manager. I have a loyalty to the players. And I'm not sure it is in America at the moment, but as I say, probably in the UK, the size of the department is pretty much maxed out now. I don't think we're going to see departments getting much bigger. In the smaller countries in Europe, yes, I think they'll definitely get bigger. And then I think it's important that these departments are managed by a manager. You know, not just a fitness coach who is, well, no one else will manage the department. Oh, okay, I've been here the longest, I'll manage the department. It actually requires management skills today to keep a department together and to keep the department growing, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. And how have you found your I suppose, just from that performance management aspect of teams, your evolution just in terms of experience and really just managing people? Is there anything that you have even done on top of not only degrees, but put yourself in situations to be able to really upskill on that, I suppose, that management aspect? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people that's listening in here today that are wondering how they actually do get it. Is it just time in the seat? What advice certainly would you have for people aspiring to get to that level?
I think we all learn from the managers we work with, and we'll take good things and we'll take bad things. I think it's important to be yourself, to actually, what is my philosophy? What are my core values? And every now and then, it's good to actually reflect on, am I living up to my core values? One of the things that I'm very, very fortunate is I got myself a mentor, Malcolm, who is, very demanding. I can sometimes, it's one of the picking up the phone, and he will laugh if he hears this, but it's can be quite harassing because he's very demanding. He'll set goals and he'll want answers, and there aren't any hiding places. So I guess if you don't have a formal management education, then it's really, learning by doing, learning on the job, learning from the players, learning how the players react. So you'll have one management way of dealing with players and dealing with the people we work with. And then also, I think it's important that we have to be able to communicate from the people above us, as well, the owners of the club and the CEO, etc. That's also something I've learned, and Malcolm's taught me a lot about that. About sort of, basically, there's certain things they want to hear, and the quicker they can hear them, and the less time it takes. As an example. Then communication. It's
Yeah, and I think that's just on reflection. Obviously, in our market over here, we've got a really developing, and we've got new teams coming into Major League Soccer over here in North America. We have a lot of performance managers that are stepping up for the first time. And as you know, when you're sitting in the seat and there's a lot of different conversations you're exposed to, that is a really big skill set to be able to develop that over time. And obviously, I think the more time in the seat, more better you get at it. But got any kind of really big advice as to managing that whole process in terms of keeping the open communication, especially when the heat does come, because we know what those conversations can end up like. But yeah, any examples? Obviously, you've had worked with some of the world's best managers in those environments. What have you really taken away from that?
I think it's working with the manager as a clear philosophy, and as you mentioned there, it's actually standing by that philosophy. So, as soon as you're making one decision, on a Monday, and then in the same scenario presents itself, maybe with a different player on a Wednesday, and you're reacting differently, or a member of staff, or after a defeat, or before. It's really that understanding the philosophy of a manager and being true to that philosophy. I think that's, and I actually, you know, I really admire the managerial skills of all the managers I worked with. I think it's only when you maybe get a little bit older and more experience, you actually really appreciate these guys are under a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You know, it's a press conference, or it's a one-on-one with the player, or it's, you know, addressing the team after a defeat. Of course, if you're winning and the wind's blowing in the right direction, everything's fine. Yeah. I have so much respect for managers working at the top level today, and you know, I think one of the messages that I can to give to my fellow practitioners listen is, you know, we have a huge responsibility to support them, and you know, we need to support them in thick and thin. But I will say then about, you know, this jump up to head of performance, it may not be everybody's cup of tea, as we say over here, because it does take you further away from the grass. And, you know, I'm very fortunate with the national team. I am on the grass, you know, I am doing the warm-ups, I am doing all the sessions on the grass. But, you know, a lot of my time in the other jobs are administrative, you know, one-on-one, you know, setting up maybe master classes one-on-one with the staff, and there's a lot of emails, and there's a lot of, you know, writing, and there's a lot of things that in some respects are taking you further and further away from, you know, what you came into the game doing. So it's not, you know, for me it shouldn't be, oh, as I said, you know, I've been here the longest, or he's been or she's been here the longest, let's move them up to head of performance. No, I think it should be, it's far more complicated than that.
Yeah, they're amazing insights, and we've kind of jumped the gun a little bit with a couple of our upcoming slides here, which is fantastic and really what we wanted to achieve. But I think just in terms of your involvement in the game as well, in terms of the evolution of the game, you no doubt have seen varying philosophies and styles of play. Talk us through some of the, I suppose, just the evolution of where we're at today with regards to the highest level of performance in your own mind.
I mean, if you look at international football today, you know, we play now, there are 55 nations in Europe, and you know, very rarely do you see, I mean, it does happen, it still happens, but you know, you'll see a top nation bidding Iceland with a population of 250,000, you know, 1-0, or Germany beating Iceland 2-1, or even Iceland drawing or winning themselves, or a Liechtenstein or a Luxembourg. So, you know, in terms of, and I would say the tactical, so people have got, obviously the managers or the coaches have got far more advanced tactically, but physically, I mean, you know, when we used to go to some of these smaller nations, Faroe Island comes to mind. We knew if we could, you know, if we were in the lead or drawing at 65, 70 minutes, then, you know, we were fine. We go to Faroe Islands now, and you know, we go 2 up, and you know, we're getting bombarded because they've been able to increase their physical capacity, and you know, they're still going at 95 minutes. So with the evolution and everything's involved naturally, and of course, you know, with the money involved today, that's you know, there's more money for winning, which means that we can invest more money at sort of our end of the platform. But this is quite an interesting one, because and you mentioned it yourself, that there are different managers, and you know, I'm aware of a couple of have come over now to the MLS that have very different philosophies, and even in England now, you know, at the top, we you know, without mentioning names, we have the tacticians, we have the, you know, they're regarded as the top of the top, and this guy in the picture here, he's one of the top managers in the world, and that is in people who don't understand football, and analyze with statistics. I mean, that is a strong statement. So. And even some of the managers I work with today, absolutely. I mean, philosophy and tactics and coaching on the grass, I've not seen better. ask them to turn on a computer, they'll tell me that I'm wrong, but they'll struggle.
Yep.
But I think this is also quite interesting now, and we'll touch on it when we talk about coach education, is that this new generation or the younger generation of coaches who are coming through the ranks now, they will have grown up with technology, with the sort of the 50, 60-year-olds now are still on that, they may have done or they may not have done. But of course, growing up with technology is going to make all the analysis side of things and the sort of technology a lot easier to selling.
Yeah, I got you. And I suppose that's had a really big, and we'll probably get to this a little bit later on as well, but your involvement, obviously, just in terms of the coach education and curriculum with the evolution of the game. You're obviously sitting on a number of panels with respect to that. What are some of the really key focus points, I think, and we mentioned the coach education piece, what are some of the key, from your perspective, as to really what you're trying to achieve with regards to new practitioners and new coaches that are actually coming out and into the game, and obviously even those who are currently in the game as well? Where's the content design sort of heading?
Maybe if we go to the next slide, if
yeah,
can just pull up the next slide.
Absolutely.
This one. So most fitness coaches know a bit about everything, but they aren't really specialists. They know about physiology and anatomy, but they aren't physiologists or doctors. Above all, they have no idea about football. And we can turn that around and we say, well, actually, what do the football coaches, do they know about what we do? What do they know about sports science? But most importantly, what should they know about sports science? And that's a big project with UEFA now. We're spending a lot of time supporting the national associations and working with the national associations and using their experience and not dictating in any way to them, but all the national associations in Europe saying, how can we improve the knowledge of our football coaches now? And big emphasis on the pathway from grassroots through to the pro license in the UEFA Pro license, which is what you need to work at the top level over here. And if I now have 60 hours of fitness content on the pro level, as a football coach, I'm not sure I really want to be sat there listening to ATP and ADP and energy production and bones and et cetera. What I should be learning is how I can work with a group of specialists to get the best out of them, but also what I can demand from them. So we need to educate our coaches. So actually, when they walk into a club with the highest coaching diploma, they actually can make the demand. So not, oh, hello, you're head of performance. What are you doing? And okay, I'm the coach. I know what I want from my head of performance. I know what I want from my performance nutritionist, my psychologist. I know in the academy, if I'm bringing players up from the academy to the senior, I know I need to know enough to be able to make demands, and that's a really interesting one. And two other things, we do a lot of reality-based learning. So, we create scenarios and then we work from them. And also we work with the adult learning principles where we're not having hour-long lectures or boring webinars like this one, no, or hour-long webinars. We actually are integrating with them and they are, we're forcing them to participate. So I think coach education is huge, and then on top of that, we need to prepare our coaches to coach in a men's team or a women's team or a boys team or a girls team or a mixed team. So coach education has to reflect that a coach may be moving on to work in the women's or men's game. And of all of my work in football, this is one of the things that really excite me, and we can make an impact, but once again, not what I do, but what I and my group on the UEFA Advisory Board can do. But bringing the 55 national associations together, and some of the smaller, believe me, some of the smaller countries have some great ideas because they have to. I mean, if I'm a big nation, if I'm a Germany or an England or France, I've got all the players. Of course, they do a lot of very good work as well. But if I'm an Iceland or Sweden, we have to be creative. And some of the coach education programs now are really, really exciting. Really exciting.
And that's kind of hit home a little bit in some conversations personally that I've been involved in. But at the same time, I'm thinking about the CEO and really setting up these departments for the first time. And I think we've got new teams, obviously, across the MLS that are coming in for the first time and really trying to understand their processes and what they're actually looking for. And I think you really did hit home in terms of some of the advice, but that trust, the level of education that's required, and just the knowledge to be able to extract out of their departments and how that is going to obviously impact immediately. So that's really pleasing to hear, is the work and devotion that's obviously going into that space. And I think that's a really critical area for the modern day fitness coaches to really understand the skill sets that are actually required or could be required in these roles to complement the organisation. So I think we're.
And I think there's a buzzword sustainability, but I mean, in today's climate, we also have to, yes, we want to make an impact in the short term, but we want to build a sustainable model for the long term as well. And we need different stages, and we need to, it's a really interesting one. We need to create a foundation in the club where managers can come and go, and I think in the not too distant future, a manager bringing an entourage of 7, 8, or 9 people with him or her, I think those days are far behind us. I think clubs will realize the importance of building a very solid structure within the club, and managers, they'll come in with their own philosophies, which is really good, and they can maybe even come in and challenge some of the philosophies there. That's the best way to improve. But I think the days of sort of ripping everything apart and starting from scratch, I think they're long gone.
I know in terms of the development conversation we had, obviously, when we caught up last time, just purely based around if we're looking at technologies and implementing some form of technology in your organisation. I know you certainly had some recommendations based around that if you were to go in and actually conduct an audit in an organisation from an academy level all the way through to the first team. But I certainly took a lot out of it, and I think that'd be really good to hear for new teams coming into the league over here, and any advice that you may have in terms of that process.
I mean, I think the first thing is I would audit the people. I mean, I think that's, and the people who are already there, their qualities, their roles, how long they've been there, if there are enough of them, if there are too many of them. And there's a saying that, bring good people into the building and good things will happen. I think one area where we often fall down on is when there is a transition of manager, or there is a transition of new staff coming in, and I call it transition management, which in the business world, it's a known phenomenon. It's worked very well. I've been at clubs where either I've come in myself or been in situations where a new manager's come in. Is presented at 12 o'clock. On 4 o'clock, he's on the training field taking a session, and maybe 6 months later, you get a chance to talk to him in the canteen. Obviously, exaggerating a little bit, but really nailing down that process of any form of transition. But then, in terms of auditing, I think what we need to be better at, and if we come back to technology, is technology can be shared. Between the clubs. So, if we're investing in a piece of technology, how can that be shared, for example, between the men's and women's team if we're training on the same site? So if it's a force platform, do we want a force platform that's a permanent force platform that stays in the gym, or do we want something that's portable that can be moved between gyms? Can we start using it down with the academy? So we're creating sort of routines or even data to follow these all the way up. So what we're doing in the first team is reflected down in the different academy teams. Wearable technology is slightly different, and I'm sure Matthew will come to that at some point. But there are certainly other pieces of technology that, really looking at how can we get the best use out of this technology. And when we started in Leicester, we would try new technology here and there. But today, actually, there's a lot of evidence-based technology that we know people are using. We know there's data out there. We know the companies are able to give us shared data within our sport. Having said that, there's also, for every piece of established data, there's probably 20 startups knocking on our door saying, "Hey, look, I've got the next best thing." And I really do like to think one of the things I pride myself on is trying to be open-minded. So if I do get any form of communication from a startup, as long as the message, I feel, if I get an email or a message on LinkedIn, as long it's not a standardized message where they've just crossed out the person before's name. If I feel this is aimed at me, this is personal, I will always try to answer, and I think that's important. But again, coming back to the audit, and if we are looking to invest, is this a long-term investment? So, I don't want a coach coming in and saying, "Oh, we need this," and then 6 months later, when that fitness coach leaves, that piece of equipment gets put on the shelf. And that's where maybe, and I guess something we also talked about is interesting is what's the level of knowledge of sports science of someone on the board? So maybe on the board of a club, do we actually need someone with sort of sports science applied knowledge? So, when there is that board meeting and we're discussing, the sports science department want to invest in this, or they want wearables, or they need another mention of staff. I mean, unfortunately, all too often or not, I think it's, maybe it goes that way or that way on, without really, I hope I'm wrong, but I get a feeling that, we do need some type of representation at the top level. But auditing, I'll come back. Auditing would be probably people, and then also, what we've got, what we think we need, and then sort of the plan of implementation, and then if it's technology, making sure we have the staff to help us with that technology, because that's also something that's overlooked. We're keen to bring technology in, and then suddenly we have a physio and I've got
No, it's a really big point. And I know one particular area we spoke about last time was just purely based on that change of philosophy, looking at, as simple as this is, the battery of drills and the consistency from the top all the way down, and let alone how we're auditing all of that data, and obviously that drill design, because it can have some significant impacts on the organisation. And that is actually, it's led into a couple of questions that have just actually come off the chat as well. But I might let you take that one first, and then I'll come back to these couple of questions.
So just repeat the question again, Matt, sorry.
Yeah, so we spoke about just the fact of the change of, obviously, coach, manager, all the way through the organisation, and the impact that can have potentially from a drill design, and then the impact all the way down to the academy programs, just the consistency and the flow of that information across the organisation.
That's what we can build up and should build up over time. So actually a changing coach, as I say, it may challenge a particular way we're doing things, and I hope they would, either a football coach or a fitness coach. But if we know that, we've got data and we've done it this way, and we know why we've done it this way, and we can show how we're using it and why we're using it, then, and it could be, I mean, just a simple thing that you know, the watt bike, which I'm sure many of us have worked with, just, you know, that first push down, is it a left foot at a 90 degree, or is it free, or, you know, are we doing a standing start with a 40-meter speed? There are a lot of very simple things that, you know, if it's not documented and it's not standardized, it's not accepted. You're right, it can change things dramatically. So, you know, top down, very important, and really putting structures and putting processes in place that I keep saying it. Yes, they can be challenged, and they should be challenged, and they can be made better. But at least there is, and probably documentation is key. I mean, I'm sure we're all guilty of it, aren't we? You know, the watt bike. Okay, we may register the height seat, but are we looking at a left foot or a right foot first push up? I hope we are, and I'm sure most of us do. But you know, if I then leave tomorrow, where is that documented? So
yeah, it's a great point. It's a really good point. The couple of questions that have just come through here from Marios is, what speed bands do you use for different age categories, and also what bands for women football? Any recommendations?
Yeah, so the good thing about the women's bands are that FIFA, if we go first with the FIFA, women's bands are now, that FIFA do have a set thresholds at 1 to 5. I don't know them off by heart, and I get sometimes confused because I work in meters per second and they're given in kilometers per hour. But if you do go in and look at just look up the FIFA thresholds, and I would certainly recommend using those. However, you know, this argument about do we use standard bands or do we use individual based on a percent of peak? And my advice there is probably both. So in some of the clubs I've worked in, we've actually had both. So we've presented data in one, but we've always had as a percentage of peak in the background, just in case, you know, something doesn't look quite right. You know, we've got a player, you know, not really getting into his or her band 5 zone as much as the others, and okay, but actually as a percent of their max, you know, okay, we can explain it by that. And in terms of the youth, it's a really good question, an interesting question. I don't have that experience, but again, it's probably being consistent and actually realizing the implications of if you decide to change your bands while it may work within your club, then of course, then what happens if we want to then compare to other clubs, to a league average, to the research? It's a really good question, which again, there'll be more people out there, but consistency, standardization, and again, you know, just making sure that, you know, what are the advantages and disadvantages of using either a set threshold or based on a percent of a peak speed, or because of course we have to change the thresholds as we go down to the younger players. We all know that. So that's
I got you. One more is just with regards to what sort of top five, if you had to pick key parameters that you might use within, say, GPS monitoring. I'm sure you've heard this one a few times.
So you know, I think this is something that we'll come on to. I don't think there are 5 out there today, because, you know, for those of you who've come across the football movement profile metrics that the Catapult have, I was actually fortunate enough to be part of that process, where we actually are using metrics based on time. So we're looking at time spent in dynamic exercise, time spent in continuous running, and then time resting. The problem that we have today is when we choose a distance, so we may choose a total distance, and then we choose a number of accelerations. The big thing for me is we can be choosing many, and should be choosing many parameters or metrics for ourselves as sports scientists. So it's the old tip of the iceberg. So, you know, under that tip of the iceberg, you know, we can and should be working with parameters, because, you know, it may only be a couple of players that suddenly stick out here, but can explain that. But the key of then is how we report and what we report back to the coaches. I'm a big believer in that we should be choosing metrics that match to a great extent what the coach has seen himself. So if he's seen a high intensity session, or he's believed, so we're playing 5v5 in a small area, we need to be showing him something that reflects it's a high intensity session. And it sounds kind of straightforward, but it's often not. Because if we go in too small an area, we may not be getting a high number of accelerations, decelerations, for example, based on what dwell times we're using and what kind of distances we're using. We certainly won't be getting any high speed running. I don't have 5. I really like the football movement profile. Of course, I say that because I was involved in it, but it is a really simple way of educating, of communicating with players and coaches, because it's all based on time. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not a good answer.
No. That's what we want. We want honest feedback. So it's greatly appreciated. And I think that you spoke about, obviously, that just purely that context, right? Like that was one of the conversations we had last time, just based around for a winger, knowing when to press and the implications potentially of that. From an acceleration perspective, but then obviously the context around, well, they're out of the formation. What does that now mean? And the implications to the team. So I think in terms of not only which parameters to look at, understanding the bigger picture and the accountability around that is obviously a real skill in itself. But you mentioned the football movement profile. Obviously parameters, you've done a lot of work, particularly with Chris Barnes and so forth. Just talk us through some of that, because I'm sure people are really keen to hear a lot more from literally yourself, behind the rationale and obviously the rollout of that. Yeah, we'd love to hear some insights as to how you got to that investigation.
Just coming back to that, the 5 parameter question, I really do encourage those of you who are working at that level to experiment with parameters. I mean, I spent hours and days and months, acceleration density, acceleration distance, changing from mid acceleration to high acceleration. What does that look like? What does that look like for this player or that player? So I think the key is really, as I say, to make sure that you know, the area under the tip of the iceberg is as big as possible, and you know, certainly the younger ones out there who have the time and have the, you know, with the open field software, it's quite easy now to manipulate these parameters, and you may even be exporting to a CSV. But you know, trying to always, okay, this is what I've got this feeling from the game or the drill, or this what's okay, what parameters are really actually matching what I'm seeing there, and it really is an experimental process. Yeah. Football movement profile actually is you know, something, you know, already in the 80s, I was filming players with a camera on one play and really trying to get an understanding of how they were moving. And this has been a really big thing for the last 30 years in my career is really, and I still think we're a long way from understanding what I call the micro movements. Now, I've done it with a player. I've got a player up to a maximal heart rate within about 90 seconds, probably 2 minutes, with no accelerations, certainly with no high speed distance. Maybe we've got the odd IMA, high intensity effort, but you know, it really only takes a couple of steps to the right or to the left or forwards or backwards or a jump. You know, the metabolic cost of these micro movements are really, really high, especially when we've got some of our bigger players. I mean, I'm working with players who weigh 100 kilos and have 6% body fat. I mean, these guys are powerful athletes. So every time and every step that this player takes, you know, it's a huge metabolic cost of that acceleration. And if after 2 steps, I then have to decelerate, the metabolic cost just goes through the roof. Yet we're still not very good today at picking up these movements with the standardized metrics, and I know that, and this was one of the reasons, or the main reasons, that we looked at the football movement profile. And the way that we did it is we actually went to the game first. So we filmed a player, and then I described under the player on the timeline. I was watching on a timeline what I thought that player was doing, and it was at a high metabolic cost or a low metabolic cost. Was he running? Was he accelerating, decelerating? And then we threw this back and forth with some of the data scientists at Catapult, who did an absolutely amazing job. And we got closer and closer. So they were able to produce, their metrics that matched what I was seeing on the field. And it was really unique. And it was, the results, it's really helped me a lot to complement some of the more traditional metrics, which obviously I still use when I can. And because these are inertia-based metrics, then we're able to use them inside as well, which actually, as we play in our national stadium, which is just across the road. Well, actually, it's my background here. We have a roof, so unfortunately we don't get out there. We don't get the GPS signal out. So these micro movements, and I know, and I can say that if we were to have this conversation in 3, 4, 5 years time, we've got a long way to go, but it's going to come quite quickly, and I really hope that. Matthew, that Catapult are going to be leading that way, because we are missing a lot. We're missing a lot of these micro movements, and just the other thing then, because this is the area that gets me excited, is the quality of movement. So we register. Okay, he made 40 accelerations. What was a deceleration? If I'm going to put pressure on the ball, I need to accelerate, but I also need to decelerate. What's the quality of that acceleration? I mean, what is that? Do I have any measure? What were my first 4 steps? Because you will see that some players will fly in 3 or 4 steps. Others will be like, cart horses taking those first 3 or 4 steps. Yet again, they both may register a high intensity acceleration. So again, and also on one occasion, it may be the right decision to put pressure on. The other one, actually, he or she should have been better standing still where they were. That would have been a better action than to actually, because they may be leaving a space for another team to come into. As you can see, I do get excited.
Look, I think it's great. It's really exciting. I think you are certainly diving into a lot of areas that are still untapped, and again, your involvement, and no doubt a lot of your colleagues as well, that are investigating this space, I think could potentially have a really big implication across a multitude of sports as well. When we're looking at the basketballs and AFLs and so forth of the world, hockey, these real flow-based sports, there is some context there that we are missing. So I think that's really exciting to hear that, and I can see the passion as well as really, if we had another hour to dive into that would be really exciting to see where it could go. But I am a little bit conscious of time here as well, mate, because I know you've got an alarm that could go off in the background here in a minute. But I know there's a couple of things that we wanted to just quickly dive into, because we're just getting along to the hour here as well, and it's been jam-packed. Literally, for me personally, it's been an honour to talk to you, and I feel like I'm just getting started. So you did mention a little bit just in our catch-up with regards to some of the football for health, and some of the work that you're doing there. Would love to share that with us and tell us some insights.
Just firstly, before I forget to mention my colleagues here who do a fantastic job, and actually, Let's Bring Fitness Back to Football. It's not our. It actually came from the Football Association of Ireland, so I just want to give them credit for that before they're back on that. And I think it's great. I love that. Let's bring fitness back to football, and we've kind of adopted that as our motto. And I think all of us here, and Chris Barnes, who you know, Matt, we just happen to be a group who have been got UEFA's trust to coordinate with the national associations, and I would really encourage any of you out there, it's together we can be so much stronger, and we can help each other. So I think the idea that there are experts and they of course they can you know, they can share their knowledge and share their experience, but it's this togetherness that, you know, we can really make a lot of you know, a lot of progress in a very short period of time. The Football for Health is an interesting one where you know, it is happening all over Europe. I'm not sure about how it's with you guys, but I'll just mention a Danish research group. And again, if any of you are interested, it's you know, if you just put in the words Football for Health, and then in Denmark, Professor Peter Krustrup and his colleagues are doing some amazing work where they're actually just looking at recreational football of both, you know, older people, 60, 70, 80 years old, you know, playing small-sided games with obviously very where the rules are controlled, but also for cancer patients and for things like diabetes, because it's just, you know, you've got not only the physical exercise, which of course we can measure with our wearables to show that, hey, actually we're doing some really good work here. But of course, you've got the social aspect, you've got the mental aspect. You know, any of us working, I mentioned to you before, Matt, that I think, you know, I'm certainly in a stage of my career where I'd like to give back, and you know, that we work in the elite, but we can have such an impact on the health of boys and girls at grassroots. And now we're seeing at the other end of the scale, at this sort of 60, 70, 80-year-olds, you know, bringing these people together, throwing them a ball. Some of them have never played football before. Some of them have played football in the past. And just the health benefits are going through the roof. And you know, we've got some really nice controlled, or I'm not taking any credit for this at all. And you know, the Danes have done a lot of work, and other groups as well. So this is something that, and you know, our clubs can do it. We can organize it through our clubs. You know, we can use, and look, I'm not saying it because I'm on this webinar, but you know, wearable technology to show them, well, actually, in the last 40 minutes, you've just run 6 kilometers, or you just covered 5 kilometers. Would you rather come here every Thursday and kick a ball around and cover those 5 kilometers? Or do you want to sit on an exercise bike in a gym, or do you want to go on for a run on the road? So I think this is a really exciting area, and I think it's great where we can, you know, as I say, those of us who've been fortunate to have you know, spend our career in the game, is actually to give things back in either grassroots or, in this case, Football for Health.
Yeah, awesome. No, fantastic. Well, I know we're sort of getting on the hour here, and we've covered so much today, and we really got a good insight in terms of not only your whole journey, but I think what it's really like working at the pinnacle of performance and certainly management as well. And I think there's some really great messages out there for anyone who's tuned in, and we certainly have had a lot from today. So we're really grateful, obviously, for the fact that you dived into the cultural discussions, not the philosophy. Yes, there was some GPS and technology, obviously conversations in that, but really the purpose of what we highlighted, particularly with this discussion, was to really, if anyone is potentially thinking about going into this nature of this type of role, what does it look like at its really granular level? And understand that, as you mentioned, it might not be for everyone in terms of the way that it, obviously they tick, what the demands actually look like, and certainly some of those discussions that you're exposed to. I think we really unpacked that very well, and you certainly did. And obviously, we did touch a little bit on the football movement series from a Catapult perspective. I think that's really good to hear that, because there has been a lot of discussion in the industry, certainly based around what are these. I think we're very ingrained in GPS, and knowing that extra piece of detail as to where we're pushing the boundaries. I think it's really good to hear some insights from experienced people like yourself. And as you mentioned, I think we've still got some extra layers there that we can continue to develop, which is extremely exciting. And I hope there's going to be a lot more development in that space, because I personally believe that there will be. let alone obviously the experience and obviously your new challenge as well for you and your family. So that's really exciting, and we wish you all the best, obviously, for that. But we might finish things up there. I'll just see if we've got any questions that are coming through on the chat here. Actually, we've just got one more from Dylan, and then we might finish up. So I coach a high school girls team, and we have the most basic catapult ones, which I believe is our player tech. We look at top speed, distance, sprint distance, and maybe a couple of other metrics. We wear them in training and matches. What metrics should I be looking for to best provide deliberate feedback? And I think we did cover off on an element of that just before, but Dylan, what we might recommend is just to unwind a little bit and go back and have a look at that conversation from Paul, because he certainly.
But sorry,
to that.
Yeah. One of the things we had a meeting yesterday, and I'll be brief on it, but you know, this how, you know, the intensity we should be or can be pushing our girls, because you know, we even at it was a national team, so I was at the Swedish FA, I was working with the top female coaches, and what they're seeing out on the field is coaches not daring to push the girls. So if on the next field there's a boys, I mean, the intensity is high and remained high, but when they then go and see the girls, there seems to be a difference. So, and of course, one of the problems is if we're only using the match as a reference and the intensity of the match is down, then of course then all our reference to the match will be slightly skewed. Now, it's a really interesting one, intensity. So intensity is a harder variable or parameter. Volume's a lot easier, and the high speed distance is the speed distances. But you know, my kind of advice would be try to look at some of the intensity variables or the intensity metrics, and discuss with the girls. Discuss, you know, can we be pushing a little bit more? You know, what is our, you know, what are our periods of the game whereby, you know, we have the sort of the highest demands if we're setting a high press or we're transitioning or whatever. And I think together, I think the coaches and the girls together can probably come you know, take that next step.
Yep, I got you. So just a couple of quick little questions that I was keen to throw at you, just to finish off here, and they're more rapid fire. So, what would the most challenging, I suppose, not only manager, you don't have to go into details with names and so forth, but what's probably the most challenging conversation or time that you've really had with a manager, just working through that example?
I guess if it's you know, if it's a member of staff that we've decided that, you know, we really need to move on, or maybe a player that's you know, not, you know, because it's quick answer, a member of staff that we made to move on, or probably a player that you like but really aren't pulling their weight, and you know, maybe holding the rest of the group back.
Yep, got you. The most challenging time in your professional career?
There was a time actually back in the early 2000s where I was one foot in the door of one of the top clubs in Europe, and I was literally about to turn up, and the deal was pulled because the assistant manager at the time left the club and moved on, and in hindsight, absolutely, you know, it's a sliding doors, the movie Sliding Doors type of scenario. What if that had happened? But that was tough at the time.
And if you were to go back 10, 15 years in your career, what would you change and why?
You know, I probably wouldn't change a whole deal. I'm very, very, very fortunate to have a family who have accepted that I do travel a lot, and by the sound of things, you travel quite a lot as well, Matthew. You know, often I think, would I have spent more time with the family? And you know, I probably the way I balance it is fine. So, you know, my wife is, you know, she loves the kid. We, of course, we all love the kids, but she loves being with the kids. She's had the opportunity to be with the kids. You know, I probably wouldn't have changed too much. I probably wouldn't have changed. And I'm very fortunate to be able to say that. Very privileged to work with some great people. Love traveling. Love to meet new people. So,
excellent, mate. Awesome. All right, I think we've finished up there. We've certainly taken up enough of your time, mate. And again, I've really enjoyed the discussion, and I really appreciate your open and honest and candid feedback around all of your examples. I know certainly you don't do these very frequently, and I'm personally very honoured to get you on. So and just have a general chat. So I will certainly be in contact, and hopefully in the future we might be able to run one in a live event or something of that nature as well. But hopefully for all of our customers across the globe, particularly in North America here, that you did take something away from that. We will get busy again planning for next year, and again targeting some really world-class practitioners. So Paul, again, thanks very much for your time, mate. And we might finish up there. Is there anything else you want to make mention?
No, you know me. If I get going now, we'll be here till midnight. So I'll thank you all so much for listening, and an absolute pleasure. And take care and stay safe, and good luck for the rest of the season.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.